The desperate theft. The night was quiet. Too quiet. The farmer, John Hale, woke to the sound of an alarm bell from his fields. It was not the wind. It was not the rain. Something had crossed the sensor lines. John grabbed his rifle from the wall and stepped outside. The moon of this alien world cast a pale blue light across the fields. The tall crops bent under the night air, but there was another movement. Quick, sharp, low to the ground. A shadow rushed between the rows of grain. John's heart beat faster. For weeks, tools had gone missing. Small food packs had been stolen. He thought it was wild animals, but animals did not steal spades. Animals did not cut fence wires. Tonight he would find out who was behind it. He moved quietly, boots sinking in the soft dirt, the rifle steady in his hands. Every sound seemed louder. The hiss of wind, the buzz of night insects, even his own breathing. He stopped near the barn. The doors creaked. Someone was inside. John raised the rifle. "Come out!" he shouted. For a moment, silence. Then, slow steps. The door opened. A figure stepped into the moonlight. It was not a man, not one of his neighbors. It was her. An alien woman, thin, ragged, her skin pale silver under the light. Her clothes were torn. Her eyes glowed faintly, a sign of her species. She held a bag filled with his food. John's finger tightened on the trigger, but she did not run. She did not fight. She dropped the bag, knelt in the dirt, and raised her hands. Her voice trembled, but her words were clear. "Don't kill me. I have nothing left. Please. I only wanted to live." John frowned. His farm was hard enough to keep alive. He had no room for thieves. "You should have thought of that before stealing from me," he said coldly. She lowered her head, her body shaking. Then, in a voice cracked with desperation, she spoke again. "Take me instead. I will work your fields by day. I will warm you by night. I will not steal again. Just let me live." The farmer froze. He had heard of her kind, the remnants of a defeated alien people. Most settlers hated them. They called them scavengers, beggars, thieves. And yet here she was, offering herself like a slave, offering the only thing she had left. Her body and her labor. John felt anger, not at her, but at the world that had driven her to this. Still, he could not show weakness. "Why should I trust you?" he asked. The woman lifted her face. In her eyes he saw no lies, only hunger and grief. "Because," she whispered, "I have nowhere else to go. My family is dead. My people are hunted. If you kill me, I am gone. If you keep me, I will serve. That is my only offer." John stood in silence. The night seemed to stretch forever. His finger rested on the trigger, but he did not pull it. Something in her broken voice stopped him. He lowered the rifle slowly. "Get up," he said. She rose unsteadily to her feet. Her body was thin, almost starved. He could see scars across her arms and back. Not the marks of laziness, but of battles survived. "You'll work," John said firmly. "No stealing, no lies. You work my fields, you eat from my table. That's the deal." The woman nodded quickly, relief flashing across her tired face. "Yes, I will work, I swear it." John picked up the dropped bag of food. He should have been angry, but instead he felt a strange weight in his chest. She had come to steal from him, but now she stood there trembling, almost grateful for the chance to serve. He led her back toward the farmhouse. The night air was colder now, and he noticed her shiver. For a moment he almost offered his coat, but he stopped himself. She was a thief. He could not forget that. Still, as they walked, he noticed something else. Out in the distance, far beyond the crops, a faint pair of red lights flickered on the ridge. Eyes. Watching. Then gone. John frowned. Maybe she was not lying. Maybe there really was something more out there. When they reached the farmhouse, he locked the door behind them. The alien woman stood in the corner, head bowed. She looked small, weak, broken, but there was something in her stance, a strength, a hidden fire, that made him uneasy. John sat at the table, rifle across his lap, and kept his eyes on her. The silence stretched between them. Finally, she whispered, "Thank you." He did not answer. He was not sure if this was a mistake. Outside, the wind howled across the fields. But beneath that sound, John thought he heard something else, a low growl carried on the night air. Something was coming, and it was not only hunger that drove this woman to his farm. The uneasy deal. The morning sun rose over the fields, painting the crops in shades of gold. John Hale stepped outside with his tools, his rifle still slung across his back. He was used to working alone, but today was different. The alien woman was already in the field. She had no shoes. Her hands were bare, yet she bent low, pulling weeds and breaking the hard soil with nothing but determination. John watched for a moment. She was clumsy. She moved like someone who had never farmed before. Her fingers were used to holding weapons, not seeds. But still she worked, sweat shining on her silver skin as the sun climbed higher. When she noticed him, she froze. Fear flickered in her glowing eyes. "Do I work wrong?" she asked softly. John shook his head. "Keep going. You'll learn," she bowed her head quickly and returned to the soil. For hours they worked in silence. Birds circled in the alien sky. The hum of insects filled the air. John had lived on this frontier long enough to know that silence meant safety. But today, something gnawed at his thoughts. She was a thief. She had broken into his barn. Yet now, she was kneeling in his fields, pulling weeds as if her life depended on it. Maybe it did. By noon, she stumbled and fell to her knees. John tossed her a water flask. She grabbed it with both hands, drinking greedily. When she lowered it, her voice trembled. "My name is Solani," she said. John frowned. He had not asked. But now he knew. "Solani." He gave a short nod. "John," he said simply. Her lips curved into a faint, cautious smile. For a moment, she seemed almost human. That evening, the village elders came. Dust rose from the wheels of their wagons as they rode toward John's farm. Their faces were hard, their eyes sharp. The leader, an older man named Cray, stepped down. His voice was like gravel. "We hear you've taken in a thief." John stood his ground. "She works for her food. That's all." Cray spat into the dirt. "Her kind brings trouble. They steal, they lie, they bring death to honest settlers. Throw her out before she poisons your land." Solani stood behind John, her head lowered. She did not speak, but her hands clenched at her sides. John's jaw tightened. He hated the council's arrogance, but he also knew they weren't entirely wrong. Trouble had already come to his farm. He had seen the red eyes on the ridge last night. "She stays," John said firmly. The elders muttered among themselves, anger flashing in their eyes. Finally, Cray pointed a finger at him. "If more theft happens, if beasts strike again, it will be on you. Remember that." They left with the same dust and scorn they had carried in. Solani's voice was quiet when they were gone. "They hate me." John looked at her. "They don't know you. And maybe they're afraid." She met his gaze, her eyes glowing faintly in the twilight. "They should be afraid. Something worse than me is here." That night, John could not sleep. He sat by the window, rifle across his knees, watching the fields. Solani lay on a mat in the corner, her breathing steady. Hours passed. The wind whispered. The crops shifted. Then, movement. John stiffened. Out near the barn, a shape moved. It was not Solani. She was inside. He rose, pushed the door open, and stepped into the cold night. The air smelled of smoke and wet soil. Shadows crept between the rows. John raised his rifle. "Who's there?" A low growl answered. Two glowing eyes appeared in the dark. Then another. And another. Not human eyes. Not alien settlers. Beasts. Their bodies were long, lean, covered in dark fur. Their claws gleamed under the moonlight. John fired a warning shot into the air. The beasts did not run. They spread out circling, their growls rising into a chilling chorus. Behind him, the farmhouse door opened. Selani rushed out, a sharp piece of metal in her hand. Her eyes widened at the sight. "Not animals," she hissed. "Hunters." She stood beside him, weapon raised. "They smell me. They followed me here." John's stomach twisted. She hadn't lied. Trouble hadn't come because she was a thief. Trouble had come because something wanted her. The first beast lunged. John fired. The bullet hit, but the creature kept coming, claw slashing. Selani darted forward faster than he expected, slamming her blade into its neck. The beast shrieked and fell. The others snarled and leapt. John fired again, smoke filling the air. Selani moved like lightning, her scars telling the story of someone who had fought these monsters before. Finally, the beasts pulled back, growling low, their red eyes fading into the night as they retreated. Silence fell. John's breath came heavy, sweat dripping from his brow. Selani knelt beside the dead beast, pressing her hand to its chest as if in memory. "They will return," she whispered. "And next time, they will not come alone." John looked at her, his rifle heavy in his hands. He had taken in a thief. He had made a deal. But now he realized he had also invited a war. Shadows on the frontier. The sun rose red the next morning, as if the sky itself had bled during the night. John Hale stood over the broken barn door, staring at the claw marks left behind. The boards were split deep, the wood shredded like paper. Beside him, Selani touched the marks with her thin fingers. Her glowing eyes narrowed. "They were scouts," she said. "Not the full pack." John frowned. "Scouts? For what?" She looked at him, her face grave. "For more. For worse." The words chilled him more than the night air. He was a farmer. He had fought storms, drought, and hard land. But scouts meant planning, meant hunting in groups. Something intelligent was behind those beasts. Selani worked in the fields again that day, but John could see the tension in her body. She checked the sky often, as if expecting shadows to fall from it. She moved faster, pulling weeds with sharp jerks, her head snapping up at the faintest sound. The neighbors came by in the afternoon. 2 men from the next farm leaned on the fence, their faces hard. "You brought this," one of them spat. "The beasts were never this bold before." John wiped the sweat from his brow. "We don't know that," the second man sneered. "No, that alien woman, she dragged trouble here. You should have chased her off when you had the chance." Selani's hands froze in the soil. She did not look at them. She did not answer. John's jaw tightened. "She works. She earns her place." The men laughed harshly. "Her place? You'll regret this, Hale. When your fields burn, when your animals die, don't come crying for help." They walked off, their words lingering like a bad smell. John glanced at Selani. Her face was calm, but her hands trembled in the dirt. "Don't listen to them," he muttered. She looked up at him. For a moment her eyes softened. "I have heard worse." That night the wind carried strange sounds. Not just growls, but shrieks, the kind of sound that made the hair on the back of John's neck rise. He and Selani patrolled the fields together, rifles and makeshift blades in hand. The crops whispered under the breeze, but sometimes John thought the sound was footsteps. Near the edge of the farm they found more tracks, large, clawed, many of them. Selani crouched low, running her hand across the soil. They move in groups of 5, maybe 7. "You can tell that?" John asked, surprised. She gave a faint, bitter smile. "I lived through worse nights than this. My people learned to count tracks before we could count stars." John wanted to ask more, but a sound stopped him. From the ridge came a howl, deep, long, answered by others. Not one beast, not 2, a pack. The attack came fast. Red eyes flashed in the dark. Shapes moved between the crops. The beast did not sneak this time. They came with speed and fury. John fired. The shot cracked through the night. One beast fell, but 3 more rushed forward. Selani moved with frightening grace, spinning her blade in arcs of silver under the moonlight. She ducked, slashed, struck. A beast collapsed, throat torn. Another clawed her arm, but she twisted and drove her weapon into its belly. John's heart pounded. He had fought wolves back on Earth, but nothing like this. These creatures didn't just attack, they worked together. One distracted while another leapt from behind. Selani shouted a warning. John turned just in time to fire, the bullet slamming into the creature mid-jump. They fought side by side until the beasts pulled back, growling low, circling. The ground was slick with blood. Smoke hung in the air from John's rifle. Finally, the pack retreated into the dark, leaving only silence and broken stalks of grain. John leaned on his rifle, chest heaving. Selani wiped the blood from her blade, her arm bleeding where claws had torn her skin. "They test us," she said through heavy breaths. "They will come again, stronger." The next day, the council called a meeting in the settlement square. Villagers gathered, whispering, glaring at John and Selani as they stood at the edge. Elder Cray raised his voice. "Beasts attacked again. Not once, but twice. This is not chance. This is curse. And we all know what changed in this valley." Dozens of eyes turned to Selani. "She is the cause." Cray barked. "She brings death. If she stays, we all suffer. If Hale protects her, then he suffers too." Angry voices rose. Some shouted for her banishment. Others demanded worse. John stepped forward, fists clenched. "She fought beside me. She killed more beasts than any of you last night. Without her, I'd be dead. Maybe all of us would be." The crowd roared back, half in anger, half in doubt. Selani raised her chin, her voice cutting through the noise. "You think the beasts come because of me. You are right, but not because I am weak, because they are hunting me, and if you send me away, they will not stop, they will follow. They will kill until I am theirs, or until I am dead." The crowd fell silent. Her glowing eyes scanned the faces before her. "So decide. Kill me now, or fight with me. There is no other choice." That night, John returned to his farm with her at his side. The villagers had not decided yet, but the suspicion in their eyes had been clear. John placed fresh boards on the barn door. Selani sat on the steps, her arm bandaged with rough cloth. "Why do they hunt you?" John asked finally. Selani stared into the dark fields. Her voice was low. "Because I am the last of something they want to erase, and they will not stop until I am gone." In the distance, a howl split the night. Longer, deeper, closer. John gripped his rifle. The frontier had always been dangerous, but now he realized this was not just about crops or beasts. This was war. The council's threat. The settlement's council hall was full. The long wooden benches creaked under the weight of angry farmers, hunters, and their families. Lanterns burned against the high beams, but their light felt dim, swallowed by the tension in the air. John Hale stood near the front, his arms crossed, Selani just behind him. She kept her head lowered, but her glowing eyes scanned the room, watching every face. Elder Cray slammed his staff against the floor. "Silence," he barked. The noise of the crowd faded, though whispers still hissed in corners. "You all know why we are here," Cray continued. His voice was sharp, every word dripping with blame. 2 nights of attacks, 2 nights of blood, and who was at the center of it all? This creature. He jabbed a finger toward Selani. A wave of muttering passed through the room. Some nodded. Others frowned, a few looked uneasy. John stepped forward. "She's not the cause. She's the reason I'm still alive. Without her, those beasts would have torn through my farm and moved on to yours," Cray sneered. "A thief, a beggar. And now you call her savior? Have you lost your mind, Hale?" John's fists tightened at his sides. He wanted to strike the Elder, but he forced the anger down. She fights, she works, she has earned her place. Earned, Cray scoffed. She steals from us. She brings beasts to our doors. And what does she offer you in return? Lies and danger. The crowd stirred, voices rising. Throw her out, someone shouted. She'll get us all killed, another added. Selani raised her head then, her voice clear and steady, cutting through the noise. You think I am danger. But danger follows me not because I am weak, but because I am hunted. The hall went quiet. Selani stepped forward, her thin frame trembling, but her eyes fierce. My people once lived far from here. We had homes, children, fields of our own. But soldiers came, they burned our villages, slaughtered our families. I escaped, but only barely. Since that night, I have been chased, cornered, forced to steal just to survive. She lifted her arm, pulling back her sleeve to show old scars, deep, ugly lines across her skin. These are not from farming. These are from fighting, from running, from refusing to die. The crowd shifted uneasily. Some looked away. Others stared at her scars in silence. They will not stop, Selani said. The beasts you saw, they are only the teeth of a larger mouth. Soldiers use them to track me, to smoke me out. And when they come, they will not stop with me. They will burn everything here to ash. Her words hung heavy in the air. John looked around. He could see fear in the villagers' faces, but also doubt. Cray seized it quickly. Hear her well, he thundered. She admits the truth. She brings enemies to our doors. If we send her away, maybe the beasts follow. Maybe we survive. And if they don't, John snapped. If we send her out and they still come? What then? You'll be unprepared. You'll be slaughtered. Cray's eyes narrowed. Better her life than all of ours. A roar of approval came from many in the crowd. A few remained silent, uneasy, but none spoke in Selani's defense. Finally, Cray raised his staff again. We vote. By sundown tomorrow, she leaves this settlement. If Hale resists, he leaves with her. That is the decision. The council slammed their agreement, and the hall emptied with murmurs and harsh stares. That night, John sat on the farmhouse steps, staring at the dark horizon. Selani sat beside him, silent, her hands folded tightly in her lap. They won't listen, John muttered. They've already decided. Selani's voice was quiet. They are not wrong to fear me. I bring danger. If I go, maybe they live. John turned to her sharply. And if you go, you die. Is that the answer? Throw you to wolves and hope the pack disappears? She looked down, her glowing eyes dim in the starlight. I am used to running. I am used to being alone. John shook his head. Not anymore. Not while I breathe. For a long time, neither spoke. The wind moved through the fields, carrying the faint howl of beasts far in the distance. Selani finally broke the silence. They will come soon. Not scouts. Soldiers. When they arrive, this place will burn unless we stand together. John gripped his rifle, the wood warm from his hands. He thought of the council, of Cray's angry face, of the villagers ready to cast her out to save themselves. Then we'll stand, he said. His voice was steady, hard. With or without them. Selani turned her face toward him. For the first time since she had come to his farm, a real smile touched her lips. Small, fragile, but real. But the smile did not last. In the distance, a red flare shot into the sky, burning like fire against the stars. Selani's eyes widened. It begins. The red flare still glowed faintly in the sky when the sound of engines came. Low, heavy, metallic. John Hale stood in, his field rifle in hand, watching the horizon tremble with dust. Selani stood beside him, her silver skin pale under the moonlight, her eyes hard with dread. They've found me, she whispered. John tightened his grip. Then they'll find me too. The first armored vehicle rolled into view at dawn. Behind it came soldiers, tall, armored, their weapons gleaming with strange energy. They marched in lines, precise and merciless, like blades cutting across the land. The village bells rang. Farmers, hunters, and families rushed to the square, fear etched across every face. Mothers pulled children close. Men carried old rifles that suddenly looked like toys against the enemy's advanced weapons. At the front of the invaders walked their commander. His armor was black, marked with red symbols that glowed faintly. His face was hidden behind a mask, his voice sharp and cold as he spoke in the settler's tongue. "Bring us the woman," he said, his words carried across the square like iron. "The one called Selani. Hand her over and we leave. Resist, and we burn this place to the ground." The crowd shifted uneasily. Whispers rose. Eyes turned toward John's farm, where Selani stood, her blade strapped to her side. Elder Cray stepped forward, his voice shaking. "If we give her, you'll spare us?" The commander's mask tilted. "Yes, one life for many. Refuse, and none survive." John pushed through the crowd, his rifle raised. "You won't take her," he shouted. Gasps spread. Villagers stared in shock, some in anger, some in fear. Cray spun toward him, face red with fury. "Hail, you fool! You'd doom us all for her?" John stood tall. "She's fought for us. She's bled for us. And you'd throw her away like trash?" The commander's voice boomed. "This is not your fight, farmer. Step aside. Hand her over." John shook his head. "If you want her, you'll go through me." A ripple of silence spread. Even Selani stared at him, her eyes wide. Then the commander raised his hand. Soldiers aimed their weapons. "Very well," he said coldly. "We start with you." The first shot cracked the air, searing past John's shoulder. He dropped to the ground and fired back, his bullet striking one of the soldiers. The man fell, armor sparking. Chaos exploded. Villagers screamed. Some ran, others grabbed rifles and axes. The settlement square became a battlefield in an instant. Selani charged forward with a cry, her blade flashing. She cut down one soldier, ducked under another's strike, and moved with speed born of desperation. Her glowing eyes burned like fire. John fired again and again, smoke filling the air, ears ringing from the blast. For a moment it seemed hopeless. Too many soldiers, too much firepower. But then something unexpected happened. A group of villagers, hunters with old rifles, joined the fight beside John. Another group threw rocks, axes, even farming tools at the armored invaders. Fear turned into defiance. The commander stepped into the fray, his black armor gleaming. He swung a blade of red energy that cut through wood and stone like paper. Selani met him head-on, their weapons clashing in a shower of sparks. "You should have stayed hidden," the commander growled. Selani's voice was fierce. "I will not bow to you, not again." They fought with speed and fury, her small frame darting around his heavier strikes. John tried to aim at him, but the fight moved too fast, too close. Around them, the battle raged. Soldiers fell, but so did villagers. Smoke rose. Fires spread. Children cried in the chaos. Finally, Selani struck the commander across the mask, sparks flying. He staggered back, his faceplate cracked, revealing one red, burning eye. His voice was pure rage. "I will tear this place apart. Dawn will rise on ashes." He raised his hand, and the remaining soldiers pulled back in formation. The battle slowed, then stilled, leaving only smoke, blood, and broken bodies. The commander's voice carried once more. "You have until dawn. Hand her over, or the fire will consume you all." With that, the soldiers retreated beyond the ridge, leaving silence and fear in their wake. The square was ruined. Villagers lay wounded. Fires smoldered in the fields. John stood among them, chest heaving, rifle nearly empty. Selani leaned against a broken wall, blood streaking her cheek, but her eyes still fierce. Elder Cray stumbled forward, his voice hoarse. "You've killed us all, Hale. You and your alien." John rounded on him. "No, they were never going to leave us in peace, with or without her. You heard the commander. He wants her erased. He'll burn us all just to get her." Some villagers nodded, their faces pale with fear but also lit with anger. Others glared at John with hatred. The settlement was divided, torn between survival and defiance. Selani's voice broke the silence. He will return at dawn, with more. If we do nothing, this place will die. John looked around at the faces of his people, some weak, some brave, all desperate. Then we don't wait, he said. His voice was steady, sharp. We prepare. We fight. If this is the end, we'll meet it standing. The villagers murmured. Some dropped their eyes, but a few raised their weapons. Slowly, one by one, more hands lifted. The choice was made. Selani's gaze met John's. In her eyes, he saw fire, hope, and something else. Trust. Dawn would bring war. But tonight they would prepare, the burning fields. The night was short. Too short. Dawn crept closer, and with it came the promise of fire and blood. John Hale walked the edge of his fields, checking traps and barricades they had built in haste. The crops bent under the weight of dew, glistening like silver in the pale moonlight. Beside him, Selani worked silently, setting sharpened stakes into the ground. Her hands were quick, steady, as if she had done this 100 times before. The scars on her arms glimmered faintly. You've done this before, John said quietly. She nodded without looking up. Many times. Too many. John wanted to ask about her past, about the war she had survived, but before he could, the smell of smoke drifted through the night air. Selani froze. They're here. The first fire started on the far side of the valley. A line of flames rose against the horizon, eating into the crops. Villagers shouted, racing to put it out, but the fire spread too fast. John's heart sank. His fields, his years of work, all turning to ash in moments. The commander's voice echoed across the valley, carried by a machine that made his words thunder like gods. Give her to us, and the flames end. Refuse, and everything you have will burn. The villagers panicked. Some tried to form lines to fight the fire, others grabbed weapons, and many simply stood frozen in fear. John shouted, "Buckets! Water lines! Move!" He and Selani ran toward the blaze, throwing dirt and water, coughing in the thick smoke. But even as they fought, whispers rose among the people. This is her fault. If she leaves, maybe they'll stop. She should go. Selani heard them. Her jaw clenched, but she said nothing. Later, when the flames slowed but did not die, a small group of villagers cornered John behind the barn. Their faces were hard, desperate. You can't protect her anymore, Hale, one man said. His hands shook on the handle of his axe. We give her up, or we all die. John's rifle was slung across his back, but he did not reach for it. You give her up, you lose more than her, you lose your souls, another man spat. Better soulless than dead. The group moved closer. For a moment, John thought he'd have to fight his own people, but Selani stepped out from the shadows, her voice steady. If I go, will you really be safe? Do you truly believe they will stop once they have me? The men faltered. No one answered. Selani's eyes glowed brighter, her voice sharp as a blade. They will not stop, they will use me as a message. You will burn anyway, at least now you have a chance to stand. Her words cut through the air like thunder. The men lowered their eyes, ashamed. One by one, they backed away into the smoke. John exhaled slowly, his chest tight. He looked at her. You didn't have to do that. Selani shook her head. Yes, I did. They needed to hear it. The night dragged on. Villagers prepared as best they could. Old rifles were cleaned. Traps were laid along the ridges. Children were hidden in the caves. Selani stood at the center of it all, teaching them simple tactics, how to spread fire instead of letting it trap them, how to use the land to strike and vanish. Some villagers followed her orders with respect. Others glared, their hatred not gone but buried under fear. As she spoke, John watched her. She was thin, tired, scarred, but in that moment she was a leader. And though the council had rejected her, the people listened. When the preparations were done, John walked with her to the edge of the fields. The flames from earlier had left. The land blackened, smoke curling in the air. I'm sorry about your crops, Selani said softly. John gave a bitter smile. Crops can be replanted. People can't. For a moment, silence hung between them. Then Selani whispered, "If I don't survive tomorrow, thank you." John shook his head. "No, don't thank me yet, we're not done." Near midnight, betrayal came. A figure moved in the dark, sneaking toward the enemy ridge. Selani saw it first. She grabbed John's arm and pointed. It was Elder Cray. His old body moved slow but steady, carrying a torch with a strip of white cloth tied to it, a signal of surrender. John's blood boiled. "The fool's going to give you up." They raced forward, cutting across the dark fields. Cray had nearly reached the ridge when John tackled him to the ground. The old man shouted, spitting dirt, "Let me go. This is the only way. Give her to them and we live." John's fist clenched, ready to strike, but Selani's hand touched his arm. "Don't," she whispered. Her voice was calm, heavy with sadness. "Fear makes people blind. Killing him won't change that." John released Cray, shoving him aside. "If you betray us again, I'll end you myself," he growled. Cray scrambled away, his face pale with terror. Selani looked at John, her glowing eyes fierce. "Now you see. Not all our enemies wear armor." The night ended with smoke still drifting over the valley. The fields were blackened, burned, but the people were alive. John and Selani stood on the ridge together, watching the enemy campfires flicker in the distance. Rows of soldiers waited, their weapons shining in the dark. "They will come with everything," Selani said quietly. John lifted his rifle, his jaw hard. "Then we'll give them everything back." Behind them, the villagers prepared for the dawn. Some afraid, some brave, but all knowing the truth. This would be their last stand. The last stand dawn broke red and gold across the horizon. Smoke still curled from the blackened fields, rising like ghostly fingers into the pale sky. The settlement was quiet, too quiet. Every man, woman, and child held their breath, waiting for the storm they knew was coming. John Hale stood at the front gate, rifle in his hands. Beside him was Selani, her blade strapped across her back, her glowing eyes bright with fire. Around them, villagers clutched old rifles, hunting bows, even farm tools sharpened into spears. The enemy came with the sunrise. Armored vehicles rolled down from the ridge, their engines growling. Behind them marched rows of soldiers, weapons gleaming with cold light. At their head was the commander, his cracked mask now repaired, the red glow of his eye burning with fury. He raised his voice, carried by a machine that made it shake the air itself. "Last chance. Hand her over and your deaths will be swift. Refuse, and your screams will rise with the flames." The villagers shifted nervously. Some looked ready to run. Others raised their weapons shakily. John stepped forward, voice steady and loud. "If you want her, you'll have to burn us all, because we're not giving her up." His words spread through the crowd like sparks in dry grass. Fear did not vanish, but pride lit in their eyes. One by one, villagers raised their weapons higher. Selani moved to John's side. She said nothing, but her hand brushed his briefly, a silent bond. The commander lowered his hand. The attack began. The first wave hit like a hammer. Soldiers rushed forward, firing blasts of searing energy that tore through wood and stone. The barricades splintered. The gates shook under the impact. John fired back, the crack of his rifle, sharp in the chaos. One soldier fell, then another. Villagers loosed arrows, flung rocks, hurled burning oil. Traps hidden in the dirt snapped shut, impaling armored legs. Selani leapt into the fray, her blade flashing. She moved like lightning, cutting down soldier after soldier, her scars forgotten in the storm of battle. But the enemy kept coming. For every one that fell, two more pushed forward. Smoke thickened. The ground shook. Screams rose from the square as soldiers broke through the first barricade. John's breath came ragged. His rifle was nearly empty. He ducked behind a cart, reloaded, with shaking hands, and fired again. A soldier lunged at him, weapon raised. Before the strike landed, Selani slammed into the man, her blade piercing through his chest. She turned, blood splashing across her face, and shouted, "Stay with me, John." He nodded, firing past her at another target. For a moment they fought as one, human and alien, side by side, unbroken. But then the commander entered the fight. He strode through the smoke like a dark giant, his energy blade glowing red. Villagers scattered before him, too slow, too weak. His strikes cut through wood, stone, even flesh with brutal ease. "Selani," he roared. "You cannot hide. You cannot win." Selani stepped forward, blade ready. Her voice rang out like steel. "I am not hiding. I am not running. Not this time." Their blades clashed in a shower of sparks. The ground shook with each strike. He was stronger, heavier, but she was faster, darting in and out, her blade flashing like light itself. John fought to keep soldiers from reaching them. He shot, stabbed, swung with desperate strength, but his eyes never left the duel. Selani ducked, a swing, her blade slicing across the commander's chest. Sparks flew, armor cracking. He staggered but struck back, his energy blade tearing into her side. She cried out, stumbling. "Selani!" John shouted, charging forward. He fired his last bullet straight into the commander's exposed mask. The shot struck true. The mask shattered, half his face revealed, twisted and burned, his red eye blazing brighter. The commander roared, furious and inhuman. He knocked John aside with a crushing blow, sending him sprawling to the ground. Selani dragged herself up, blood running down her side. Her voice was a whisper, but it carried strength. Not again. Not ever again. With one final cry, she hurled herself at the commander. Her blade plunged deep into his chest, piercing through armor, through heart. His roar turned into a choking gasp. His weapon fell from his hand. Selani twisted the blade and ripped it free. The commander fell to his knees, his burning eye dimming, then collapsed into the dirt. Silence swept the battlefield. The surviving soldiers froze. For a moment, no one moved. Then, leaderless, they broke. One by one, they fled back toward the ridge, their formation shattered, their spirit gone. Cheers rose from the villagers, weak, broken, but real. They had survived. John staggered to his feet, rushing to Selani. She stood swaying, blood staining her clothes, her blade slipping from her hand. "You did it," he said, catching her before she fell. Her lips curved into a faint smile. "We did it." The villagers gathered around them. Some bowed their heads, ashamed of their doubt. Others touched Selani's arm, whispering thanks. She was no longer the thief, no longer the outcast. She was their defender. Days later, the smoke cleared. The fields were scarred, the homes broken, but life remained. Together, the villagers rebuilt. John worked his land again, though the soil was blackened. Selani worked beside him, slower now, as she healed but still strong, still fierce. One evening, as the sun set, John sat on the farmhouse steps. Selani joined him, her eyes glowing softly in the dusk. "You could leave now," John said quietly. "No one would stop you." Selani shook her head. "I have run long enough. Here, I am not prey. Here, I have a place." John looked at her, and for the first time since the war began, he felt something like peace. She had come to his farm as a thief. She had offered herself in desperation, but in the end, she had given him something far greater. Hope.